This video is to show you some of the features on Google Read and Write that are helpful when you're doing research. So before we begin, it's important to remember that all of these settings can be changed. So if you click on these three dots and go to settings, you can change all kinds of things. You can change how fast the person reads aloud and what kind of voice they use. I can also make it slower or faster, depending how fast I want them to read to me. And I can change what language I use for my translation. For screen masking, I can change what color the background is, all kinds of things. For Rewordify, I can make it so that it's very strong and makes things way easier. So there's lots of different things I can change in here, so make sure you know that before you get going. To activate Read and Write, you click this button here, and you should get the toolbar. Let's say I'm doing a report on the history of video games. So I'm going to start by going to Wikipedia, and the first thing you'll notice is that the Read and Write toolbar is blocking the search button. So if I click on this here with the arrows, I can move that. And then I can type video games. Let's just type video games. Okay, so now I have video game. So the first feature I want to show you is text to speech. If this is hard for me to read, I can highlight a passage and then simply click play. So that's the first thing I can use, is if I just highlight something and click play, it will read it to me. However, maybe this is a little bit difficult for me to understand. Read and Write also has this great feature called Simplify Text, which is this button here. If you watch this area of the screen very carefully, when I click on Simplify Text, you will see some of the words will change. I'll click it so you can see them go back. So the words that it changes will now be in italics, and if I click on it, it puts it back to what it was before. This can make the words that you're seeing a little bit easier to understand. So that can be very helpful as well. If this is really complicated for you, another thing that might be very useful is called screen masking, and that's this. So if I click on screen masking, it lets me just focus on the part of the screen I want to read. That can help block out distractions. So that's a very useful feature too. This is screen masking right here. The next very useful feature is the dictionary. So if I'm reading this and I read a video game, sometimes further qualified as a computer game, and I don't know what qualified means, I can highlight qualified, and I have two dictionary options up here. The first one is a regular dictionary, and if I click on it, it will tell me what it means, and it can read it to me too. I do also have a picture dictionary, and for some words, that's going to be a little tricky. I don't know if it's going to be able to find anything for qualified. Well, it tried. That's pretty good. If I picked something like computer, though, and I did the picture dictionary, it will show me a picture. So that can be really useful if there is a word you don't know. The next very useful tool on Read and Write is the Simplify page, which is right here. If I click on Simplify page, it takes out all the distracting parts of this website. So here we are. Here's the simplified page. If this is still not what I want, I can do all kinds of things here. I can change the color of the page. I have a couple options. I can change what font it's in, including this one called Open Dyslexic, which for some people is much easier to read. I can make the writing bigger. I can change the spacing. So there's all kinds of options here, and I can still use all of these tools up here. There are two more tools actually that might be very, very helpful to you when you are doing your research. One is web search. So if I'm reading and I see, as I'm going through console game, and I think, oh, I want to know more about that, I can highlight it and click on the web search button, and it will automatically open up a web search for console game. Now you'll notice the top ones are all things that are trying to sell me things, and that's because on Google, you can pay to have your results at the top. So you have to be careful about going through that, and you have to be careful about these too, because these answers may or may not be the correct answers. Just important to know. So I can do that for anything on here. If I want to say, what's Linux? I can do a web search on it. And then the last feature that I'm going to show you is extremely useful when you are trying to do research, and that is these highlighters. So let's say I'm doing research on video games and I want to research the history of video games, what they are, all of those things. I can pick these 4 colors, and let's say I'm going to say, what is a video game? I'll do that in yellow. So I'm going to highlight this part, electronic game that involves interaction with a user interface. I'm going to make that yellow. And then I'm going to keep going down. Oh, modern video games. I'm going to do modern video games and old video games. So I'll do green for modern video games. Different types of video games. So I'll put that with what is a video game. So I'll highlight this in yellow. Keep going down. Oh, recently, mobile gaming. That's modern video games. So I'm going to make that green. Here we go. History. The first video game were simple extensions of electronic games using big room-sized mainframe computers. That's pretty interesting. I'll make that blue. The first video game, first consumer video game, I'm just going to highlight that part. And it was called Computer Space in 1971. Pretty neat. Then we have some more history, so I could go through. Anyway, so I'm highlighting all these things, as you can see. When I'm done highlighting the important things, if I click this circle up here, and then I click OK, Google Read and Write will open a Google document and it will collect all of my highlights for me. Google Read and Write has collected all of that information for me, and it even sorted it by color for me, so that all my notes about the history of video games are right here, modern video games here, and what a video game is right here. Now, these are not my own words, these are copied and pasted, but it pulls it all out here and makes it easier for me. It even writes down for me where I got it from so that I can get back there if I want to. And if I went to a different website, so for example, I can simplify the terms. Then I can simplify the page. Yellow. And then I click my circle. It does that same thing again. Now, it did open this in a different document, but if I want to keep them together, I can simply copy and paste what's in one of my documents, like this. Control C for copy, or you can click on Edit, Copy. And I can put it in this document. Control V for paste. Or if that doesn't work, you can click Edit and go to Paste. And then you have all your notes together. So these are some of the tools that can help you when you are doing research with Google Read and Write.